All right, so the first about 10 minutes of this webinar is going to be uploaded to YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you would like to see more educational content like this one. After the first 10 minutes, we're going to go into more in depth on taking profits for the actual Nest Club members. We're going to start with the dot right here, okay? So first, very basic, right? Where, why, and how do you take profits? So we're going to look at dot here from a long perspective. And obviously, when you want to go long, and we're going to look at an example here with a, the simple break and retest theory, or the break and retest strategy, which basically means when resistance is broken to the upside, you can expect that resistance to act as support on the retest. And that is the retest that you want to be buying, hence the break and retest. When you enter on a previous resistance, now hopefully turns support, you are going to look at the next resistance levels above for take profits. It's quite simply just that. You take profit at levels where you believe price will run into resistance. TP1 is usually in an area called the first trouble area, which basically is the closest resistance to entry, which is usually the last local swing high. So taking a look at dot right here, we can see that it's in an overall, it's somewhat in an uptrend right here. Overall uptrend, I would say. And looking at the local market structure right here, you can see that we've broken above a level right here. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can actually see. So we've broken above a level right here, okay? And we can expect that this level right here, that was obviously resistance, might act as support on the retest. And you can kind of see how there's somewhat of a resistance area going through this whole zone right here, right? So we want to enter here. And just quickly, when it comes to stop losses, I usually place my stop loss below the last swing low of the move that broke the level based on the 4 hours. So I'm a swing trader and I'm predominantly looking at the daily and the 4 hour shots. I'm going to use the swing lows and swing highs as invalidation levels on the 4 hour. So let's say, we get a break and retest here. Preferably you want a rounded retest like that. I'm not sure if that's going to happen on this specific setup right here, but it doesn't really matter. So stop loss below the last swing low, and now to the take profit. Right now to the take profit, I always make sure that my first TP is always at 1-to-1 R or above. So on TradingView, you have this long tool right here, which is, you can find it up here. Also, I have it in my favorite toolbar right here. And this is the long tool, right? And right in the middle, you will see that number says 1.26. It means that up to TP, it's a 1.26 R trade. And I want my TP to be at 1 or above 1, right? And usually TP1 is usually at the last local high, which is this level right here. And it aligns quite nicely with TP1 at the last local highs and stop loss below the last swing low on the 4 hour. That's exactly how I want it. This is the first trouble area, right? This is the first trouble area. That's the area where you can expect price to run into resistance, right? Because it's obviously resistance. Price hit resistance here. So on the next retest of that resistance area, you can expect price to hit that level as resistance again. So that is going to be our first take profit. First take profit for me is always going to be the first trouble area and the last swing high if it's a 1R from entry. If it's not a 1R from entry, I might not take the trade, or I might look at at levels higher and just expect price to break out. But usually the last swing high will act as resistance. So if it's not a favorable trade in terms of risk to reward, I'm not going to take the trade. Right, so that's the first resistance. Now let's go out to the daily to see if we can find any other interesting resistances to take profit at um, above this level. So you can clearly see here that if we extend this to the left, you will see here that there is a decent area on the daily that kind of goes through this level right here. All right. Something like that. So it makes sense to take profits at the last local highs because it's also a major high time frame resistance area on the daily. So preferably you would want that TP to be slightly below that level. Now this is not a 1R, but if you kind of up that stop loss to right below that wick, it's a 1R and it fits nicely with right below that level, because sometimes just like a support level will get front ran, a resistance level as a TP area will get front ran as well. So you always have to put the TP below resistance, not right on resistance. You need to put it below resistance, because if there's too many sellers out there, up at that resistance level, you will never hit that level. You will just get front ran, right? So the next resistance level above would be somewhere, I believe, in this area right here, because that is where I believe the next resistance is. If you look at this as one resistance level, and then the top of this major high time frame zone, there's another resistance level, right? So if you look at the 4-hour chart, you will know what I mean here. So you can kind of view this area right here. Let's remove this zone to make it a little bit easier to see. You can see that there's somewhat of an area going through here, and that would be our TP1 area. And then the top of this range or this resistance area, you have another zone right here. And I would look at taking profits probably somewhere in that region right there. So you go back to the actual setup, see TP1 there, then TP2 would be at 1.76R. And then you look at the daily once again, and you try to see like what is the ultimate target for this move. If you get a proper breakout and you get something that would look like this, like where would this move end? And I believe targeting this area right here makes perfect sense, right? So we'll look at the 4-hour. Is this a decent resistance area on the 4-hour? And I absolutely think it is, because it hit resistance here, here. A wick filled up that whole zone right here, and then you had some type of fake out right here. So a TP3 slightly below this area to be conservative and really be sure that that TP area is going to hit. You will put your TP right on that level to kind of front run that whole area. So now let's look at this trade to see what the average R is, because this is something very important that a lot of people don't realize and don't spend enough time doing, is to calculate the average risk to reward of the trade when you've exited fully. You can't just extend your long tool up here and say that this trade is a 3R, because it's not a 3R if you take multiple profits, right? So let's say you have your TP 25% here, and your TP 25% here, and then rest of the position you TP up here for 50%, right? Now, what is the average R? Now let's show you, I'm going to show you a little trick here that I use when calculating the average R when having 25, 25, and 50 TP, is I'm using a range tool right here, which is the Fibonacci tool. And I've selected the 0, the 0.5, and the 1, which gives me the line in the middle is obviously the middle of these two lines, which can help me to calculate the average R. If I move the fib from the first 25% TP to the second 25% TP, you get one level right here, and that is obviously the 50% TP between these two, right? And then I have another 50% up here. So what I will have to do here is I will have to drag it from that middle line to that 50% TP up here, which now means that on average, this is my exit. This is where I exit 100% of the position. Now let's see if the average R of this trade is favorable. Is the average R of this trade above 2? That is my absolute minimum. If I take a trade, the average R of the trade needs to be above 2. So let's see. The average R of this trade is 2.2. This is a trade that I could take.